International land borders come in all shapes and sizes. Let's take Mali's borders as an example. They are unnaturally straight, meaning political influences likely shaped its borders. You then have a country like Bhutan, whose border is rugged and irregular with China. And then you have this absolute mess of a border between Belgium and the Netherlands in the town of Bal-Nassau. So in this video, let's travel around the world investigating some of the world's weirdest, shortest borders. But just for reference, let's see who has the longest border first. So China ranks first in the world for the country with the longest land border total length, at just over 22,000 kilometers. Russia comes in second with around 2,000 kilometers less, and then Brazil in third place with around 5,000 kilometers less than Russia. Alright, so let's move on to one of the most strangest looking borders, the Indonesia-Papua New Guinea border found on the island of New Guinea. Now, I'm sure we've all sat on Google Maps and came across this weird anomaly here, but why exactly does it exist? So the border between the two countries stretches for some 824 kilometers and is pretty much a perfect straight line, almost splitting the island into two. The border was formed as a result of the 1885 treaty between the British, of course, and the Dutch. The line split the Dutch western part with the British eastern. However, you then have this weird little section here. Well, this section was created to more suitably fit the local complex and difficult geography. But is this border Indonesia's shortest? Well, Indonesia's situation with East Timor is similar to its border with Papua New Guinea. The island of Timor is split roughly in half, with East Timor controlling the eastern part and Indonesia the western part. This border is just 228 kilometers long, but unlike the border with Papua New Guinea, it is far from straight. Another interesting and rather notorious international land border is the border between the UK and the Republic of Ireland. Both countries are each other's only land border, well, for their main land that is. So this is the Republic of Ireland here, on the island of Ireland. The Republic of Ireland is not part of the UK, however it is part of what is known as the British Isles, which of course isn't a country but a collection of islands. However, this is Northern Ireland here, which is one of the 4 countries that makes up the United Kingdom, hence the country's full name, the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. So the border that separates the two stretches for some 499 kilometers. Northern Ireland sits in the northeast of the island and only makes up around 70% of the island's total size. Now, the UK technically does have other borders, and the one I'm about to tell you about is perhaps one of the weirdest on Earth. So Akrotiri and Dekakelia are 2 British overseas territories that are found on the island of Cyprus. They are used as permanent military bases, as this enables the UK to maintain a military presence at a strategic point in the Eastern Mediterranean. This technically therefore gives the UK a 152-kilometer border with Cyprus. So Cyprus was once a territory of the British until 1960 when it gained independence. The two nations have relatively strong relations, although some Cypriots are not too happy about the presence of the military bases within their country. Staying on the topic of notorious land borders, let's take a look at the border that separates North and South Korea on the Korean peninsula. So during the Korean War, this border changed drastically. At one point, North Korea nearly dominated the entire peninsula and came close to winning the war. However, the US intervened and pushed the North Koreans back. North Korea did manage to regain some territory before the war ended, resulting in the border as we know it today. The current border stretches some 238 kilometers. But what makes this border particularly noteworthy is its proximity to Seoul. If the South Korean government could somehow move the city further south to get further away from North Korean missiles, I'm sure they'd do it in a heartbeat. So 238 kilometers is a relatively short border, right? Well, let's now take it to the next level. So Andorra has 2 land borders, that's with Spain and France. The former being around 63 kilometers and the latter 57. The country sits in the Pyrenees Mountains and is landlocked by the 2 countries just mentioned. But as short as this border is, it is nowhere near the shortest in Europe, let alone the entire planet. So then we have Liechtenstein, which has a similar story to that of Andorra. It's a tiny mountainous European country that is landlocked by two others, this time being Austria and Switzerland at 34 and 41 kilometers respectively. And then there is the case of San Marino and Vatican City, who are both enclave countries of Italy. So San Marino is found in the northeast of Italy. With it being an enclave, this means it's completely surrounded by Italy for a border length of some 39 kilometers. However, this is nothing compared to the border Italy shares with Vatican City, which is just 3.2 kilometers. The country of Vatican City is completely surrounded by Italy's capital, Rome. Next up, we have the border between Qatar and Saudi Arabia, which is just 60 kilometers long. But believe it or not, Saudi Arabia actually has another border which is even shorter, and in fact, significantly shorter. So the country's border with Bahrain is just 0.2 kilometers long. It is found on the artificial island named Middle or Passport Island, which was built specifically for the purpose of being a point of passport control separating the two countries. On Passport Island, you'll find a McDonald's on either side of the border alongside two mosques. Now, believe it or not, Canada and Denmark technically have a land border with one another, well, Greenland specifically. So Hans Island is this tiny island found in between Greenland and Canada's far north territories, in the Nares Strait in the high Arctic region. The island is only 1.3 kilometers squared, but it is split into two politically, with the western part being Canadian and the eastern part Greenlandic and therefore Danish. The border between the two countries is just 1.2 kilometers. Greenland/Denmark actually owns 60% of the island, therefore giving the other 40% to the Canadians. And as you can imagine, the island is barren and uninhabited. But perhaps one of the weirdest and shortest land borders on Earth has to be the one between Spain and Morocco. So this is Peñón de Vélez de la Gomera, which is a Spanish exclave island connected to Morocco via a sandy isthmus. So the island belongs to Spain, but has a border separating it from Morocco. This border is just 80 meters long. But why on earth is this the case? What actually happened here? Well, the Spanish Empire claimed the island in the 16th century, to which it has remained Spanish territory ever since. The island is pretty much uninhabited and doesn't really offer anything of value. Any changes to its status would likely involve diplomatic negotiations or international agreements, which just isn't really worth any government official's time, to be honest. However, believe it or not, there is a potential land border that could be classed as one of, if not the shortest on Earth, even shorter than the one just mentioned. So if you include islands in lakes and rivers, then we have this interesting situation between Norway and Sweden. So at this exact point here, we have this little island that sits on the border between the two. The border is believed to run straight through the island, giving a somewhat technical land border of around 5 meters. I mean, this one is clutching at straws just a little. So there we have it, some of the world's strangest, shortest land borders. If you can think of any others, please do tell us about them in the comments below. Like and subscribe for more geography content, and as always, thanks for watching.